今回の僕は一味違うぜ。
いつもそんなこと言ってるじゃないか。
今回は本当に違うんだ。
This is Sunahara Yohei, the lovable punching bag from the deeply tragic yet uplifting 2007 anime Clannad. Clannad takes place in the small fictional city of Hikarizaka, the place where wishes come true. Hikarizaka isn't a real place of course, but it was inspired by various locations in Japan, most notably Mizuho, the city was based off of. Hikarizaka is such a memorable place with many fan favorite locations, from Hikarizaka Private High School to Furukawa Bakery. Some of the most dedicated have even gone out of their way to visit these various spots in real life. However, what if I told you there was actually a second fictional place in Clannad, a place that nearly everyone forgot, and could possibly exist somewhere in Japan? Quick disclaimer before getting further into the video, there will be some minor spoilers obviously, and I'll explain it in a way that those who haven't watched it yet can enjoy. But I highly suggest you watch it first if you haven't already. It's a great anime with amazing themes of family, friends, and hardships. The main story of Clannad revolves around a student named Tomoya Okazaki, a third-year student at Hikarizaka Private High School. He tries to escape his troubled past by helping a girl he befriended named Nagisa Furukawa achieve her dream of starting a drama club. From there, Tomoya will meet a colorful cast of characters to help him make that dream a reality. And then there's Sunahara. Sunahara is supposedly Tomoya's best friend, and as the school's two delinquents, both are prone to getting into trouble. But Sunahara is a literal walking magnet for it. His attitude and decisions almost always ends with him being sent flying into orbit. He's been beaten up, rejected, beaten again, and then beaten some more for good measure. Poor old Sunahara. Now, while he isn't the main character of this story, and is usually the punchline for a joke, the reason I bring him up is because this mystery place involves him. You see, Sunahara and his sister Mei both have an interesting distinction of being the only characters not from Hikarizaka. They live in some far undisclosed place somewhere in the countryside of Japan. This makes his hometown the only place ever mentioned outside of Hikarizaka. There was never a name and it's rarely brought up, probably due to Sunahara's main role of being the funny haha guy that gets hurt every time he's on screen. So it's probably not even possible to find a place. Or is it? While it's true finding a place like that would be hard, there are actually some bits of information that we can use. And being the curious, mystery hunting person that I am, I took it upon myself to find this place that may or may not even exist. With that being said, let's take a look at the clues. According to the visual novel, Sunahara's hometown is located in the Tohoku region of Japan. Some notable things about this town is, for starters, it's really far from Hikarizaka, as Mei mentions having trouble visiting whenever she wanted. The place is also known to be in the middle of the mountains and really out in the middle of nowhere. This explains why both Sunaharas refer to the small city of Hikarizaka as a big major one by comparison. It's so secluded that the only arcade corner they had was in a faraway supermarket. From two flashbacks in both the anime and side stories, there's apparently some sort of playground or park where Mei was being bullied. And while the location is still secluded, it can support both middle and elementary school within walking distance of each other, as shown here. As for the connection between the mystery village and Hikarizaka is the Hikarizaka Station. While it's a fictional station, its real-life counterpart does exist, which is the Hamura Station, and this will be the starting point. The last important bit of information comes from After Story's epilogue, where we see Sunahara many years later in his hometown, as he crashes his car onto the curb. Sunahara had gotten a job there to support his folks, and there's some minor speculation over what his job actually is, as it's very vague. Most of the confusion comes from conflicting aspects, like how he lives in the dorm during a training period, and how he had to dye his iconic blonde hair back to its natural hue. This scene in particular strongly suggests it's some sort of driving job, but no one knows for certain. So I did a bit of digging and found an answer. It's most likely a taxi driving job. Now you may think it's because of the yellow sign on the roof, and I thought that too, but that's not the case, as the car Sunahara drove was in fact a Japanese practice car. However, I still think his job is a taxi driver due to these reasons. Taxi driving is relatively easy to get into in Japan, and you only need training which the company will provide. But what about the dorms? Well, they also provide many benefits, so that's most likely the case. As for the hair dye, it's probably just a formality. Now why is this important? Well, now I have more buildings to look out for while searching, and because there's already not that much info, so I'll take what I can get. Now we just have to find Sunahara. With Google Maps set up and a list of landmarks to find, the search had begun. Originally, I thought about using Hamura's Ome line to find the place. I searched west of the station as it leads directly to Okutama, deep in the countryside. So it could have been in a town near one of these stations, but that ended up being a waste of time. In the northern part of Honshu is the Tohoku region, which is divided into 6 prefectures: Aomori, Akita, Iwate, Yamagata, Miyagi, and Fukushima. In order to find the place with the right geography, I used a physical map of Tohoku to see the elevations of mountains and hills. Based on the map, I ruled out Miyagi, Aomori, and Akita for now, as they are less mountainous than the other 3. So I began my search in each prefecture, looking for any place that matched, starting with Fukushima. Fukushima seemed very promising with its abundance of mountainous terrain, and after a bit of scouting, it seems I was right, as I immediately found a place that caught my attention: Taijima Village, located in the town of Minami-Aizu. Taijima is surrounded by mountains, with necessities like shops, a driving center, taxi companies, and more around. There's even an elementary school and middle school en route with each other, just like in side stories. However, while all seemed to check out, there was one glaring issue. It was too urban. Mei and Sunahara were both mesmerized by Hikarizaka, so it had to be something much more barren to warrant such admiration. Moving on, I found another town called Koyo in the city of Soma. An interesting fact about this is, if you remember from the cutscene with Sunahara in his soccer uniform, it has the words Koyo, which was Sunahara's school in the VN. Soma does have a middle school with that name, and it has the same things needed like in Taijima Village. But yet again, it's not quite the one we're looking for, as it's in the wrong place. But in the end, these 2 places were closest to in Fukushima. The next stop is in Yamagata, with its sad looking face of mountains. After scouring the entire prefecture for a while, I found out that the majority of people lived near the cities, and any places near the mountains were just hotels and roads for tourists and hikers. With Yamagata being a bust, I searched the last possible area in Iwate. Things were starting to look bad, as eventually there wasn't a place that had what I was looking for. I even went to the 3 prefectures I left out, and I still couldn't find anything close to what Fukushima had. Every place was either too urban or in the wrong location. At this point, I felt like I'd finally reached a dead end and that reality was sinking in. Why would the creators need to give Sunahara a specific place to be from? It wasn't that important. I decided to take a step back and think. Perhaps there was something I was missing. After giving it some more thought, I thought back to what Mei said about mountains and nowhere. Then that's when it hit me. Perspective. The areas I've searched are indeed surrounded by mountains on the map, but from Mei's perspective it must have been really up close. With that in mind, I started looking for towns or villages inside the mountains that could support such a small population. I searched through several mountainous areas of the prefectures until this small spot in Iwate caught my attention, and that's when I found it. This is the city of Ofunato. Sure, it's called a city, but it's only because of its size. The majority of its area is mountains and fields, while the actual city itself is more like a town. However, this isn't where we're going. Instead, we are heading over here in the more secluded area of Ofunato, right in the middle of the mountains. Here we can see a small village out in the middle of nowhere, the village of Hikoro Ichicho, which I'll just call Hikoro for short. Its geography is perfect, as the majority of the land is residential areas with local businesses to help supply them with the essentials, thus giving no real need to travel into town. Now, is there a taxi business and driving school here? Well, no, but that's a good thing. You see, Sunahara most likely got his job in the main town. The town is big enough to support taxis, and it would also explain why Sunahara would be more than eager to live in a dorm at the company, as he wouldn't have to walk or drive back and forth between his job and home. Now let's go even deeper. Where would Sunahara's house be in? So, after analyzing Hikoro, I believe that they'd most likely live here, in the area of Kawauchi. It's walking distance to a couple of shops and other small businesses in the area, and if they ever want to head into town, they can travel down there or take a bus here at the station. Additionally, I like to think that the Sunahara family is not rich, but not poor either. This would explain why Tsunohara would gladly accept free entry as such a prestigious school, even if it is as far as Hikarizaka. They probably don't own a car either and have to walk or use the bus if they ever want to head into the city, so they probably don't get to see it as often. Now this all works except for one thing. There is an elementary school here, but there was no middle school. I've checked many places in Tohoku and I couldn't find a single place similar to this, which to be honest is probably fine. Hikarizaka isn't exactly Mizuho and has imported many other areas from various regions to the town, so I'll do the same with Hikoro. Tsunohara's middle school could easily be placed over here, even with something as big as a soccer field. And with this path laid out, it leads back home to Kawauchi. We can cross off distance, as traveling from here to Hikarizaka is really a hassle. Mei was definitely right, so why don't we have a little bit of fun and try to experience it for ourselves? Let's pretend we live in Kawauchi and Mei has asked us to accompany her to Hikarizaka. Once we pack up our things, we'll first need to take a bus to the nearest station, which is the Sakari Station. From there, we'll travel upwards on the Sanriku Railway Ryasu line all the way until we get to Kamaishi Station. Then we'll switch trains and ride the Kamaishi line west, passing through several towns and the city of Tono until we arrive in Hanamaki. Once we board a different train in Hanamaki, we can start our long journey down south, crossing several prefectures like Miyagi, Fukushima, Tochigi, Ibaraki, until we eventually reach the Omiya Station in Saitama. Still awake? It's only been 12.5 hours since we left. Come on, just a few more stops to go. Now riding the Jotsu Shinkansen line, we make our way to Musashi Urawa Station, then on the Musashino line to Nishikokubunji Station, until we at long last ride the familiar Ome line and finally arrive at Hikarizaka. Wasn't that fun? And it only took around 18 hours, and cost around 18,500 yen. I hope it was worth it. And there you have it. After graduating, Tsunohara Yohei decided to go back home to live in Hikuro Ichicho with his sister and parents. There, he managed to find a job as a taxi driver in the city of Ofunato, where he is currently living at the company's dorm until he can pass his training and receive his taxi license. The end. Thank you for watching, especially for those that got this far. I feel like most of my videos start off really boring and only the best parts are near the end. So thank you for joining me on this journey. Traveling Japan by Google Maps was pretty interesting. Also remember, this was all just for fun. It's quite possible Tsunohara's hometown is somewhere else, as there are many other factors to consider. Like Clannad taking place in 2007, many of the areas in Japan would have been vastly different back then, so places like Taijima could have been more rural. In the end, the creators probably didn't have a certain place in mind, but this was the closest I could get to pinpointing Tsunohara's hometown using all the information I had. Again, thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more stuff. And until next time, I'll just see you guys later. Bye.